Good evening, WA. Welcome to tonight's webinar, which is brought to you in partnership between Integrity Systems Company and the Western Australian Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development. My name is Cherie Young, and I'm the Communications Manager at Integrity Systems Company, and I'll be your host for this webinar tonight. The webinar tonight is designed to help you better understand the red meat integrity system and how it works to ensure our industry continues to produce quality red meat that is safe to eat and is fully traceable. Whilst tonight's webinar is about the integrity system for all species, there is a focus on the implementation of sheep and goat eID. But I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening and submitting your questions during registration. We will be doing our best to answer those questions in the Q&A box tonight. We have representatives on hand from Integrity Systems Company as well as the WA department ready to answer your questions. So as they come to mind, it would be really good if you can pop them into the Q&A box, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. Just wanted to also let you know that this session is being recorded, and in the coming days, we will be distributing that recording, the questions and answers that are raised tonight, and other resources by email. So please keep your eye out for that resource. Just wanted to go through the topics that we'll cover tonight, so you've got a bit of an idea about how this is all going to work. So I'm going to start off with providing an overview of what Integrity Systems Company is and how the integrity systems all work together and what the objectives of our system are. Then ISC's Quality and Compliance Manager, Elizabeth Bradley, will give you an update on the LPA, or the Livestock Production Assurance Program. And this will include an overview of a new self-assessment tool that's due to release soon for accreditation and reaccreditation in the program, as well as an overview of the harvested rangeland goat module. Next up, ISC's Operation Analyst George Basher will demonstrate key functions of the NLIS, including how to do property-to-property transfers of tag numbers. And then we'll have Michael Britton, who's a project manager, animal biosecurity from DPIRD, who will conclude the session with a WA-specific update on key information specifically relating to the sheep and goat eID implementation. Now, before we move on, don't forget to pop your questions in the Q&A box. We have George, Elizabeth, and Callum from ISC's customer service team and Michael all here to answer your questions. So please pop them in as they come to mind. Now, just before we move on to the next segment, I just wanted to give you a bit of a background on ISC, as some of you may not know what ISC is or how we came about. But as a bit of background, ISC was first formed in 2017, and our chief task is to manage the red meat integrity system. So our key focus is on-farm assurance, animal identification and traceability. Now, ensuring that we meet these key requirements means Australia can continue to access the global markets that we do today. So ISC is guided by SafeMeat, which is a partnership between industry and government, as well as the Supply Chain Task Force, which is a group made up of representatives from the various peak industry councils. So this diagram on this slide just sort of shows you where ISC fits in. So we're a wholly owned subsidiary business of MLA, Meat and Livestock Australia, and together we service the industry. Now a bit more of a deep dive into the programs that we specifically operate. So we have two key programs which underpin livestock traceability and food safety on farm. The National Livestock Identification System, or the NLIS, is Australia's system for the identification and traceability of cattle, sheep and goats. It reflects our commitment to biosecurity and food safety and provides Australia with a competitive advantage in a global market. All animals are identified with an accredited NLIS tag or device from their property of birth, and as animals are bought, sold and moved along the supply chain, each movement is recorded on the NLIS database. And using this information, the NLIS is able to provide a life history of an animal's movements. Now, this system is underpinned by state and territory legislation, and it enhances Australia's ability to track livestock during disease and food safety incidents. The current NLI system has existed now for over 20 years, and a major project is underway to develop a new and more user-friendly system. It is due to be delivered by June 2026 and will offer everyone a vastly improved user experience. So we're really looking forward to bringing that to you. Now, the other key program that we operate is called Livestock Production Assurance, or LPA. It's an on-farm assurance program which underpins market access for our Australian red meat. It covers the management of biosecurity, animal welfare, and food safety. And accreditation with the program provides a tick of assurance for your product from producer to all the way through to the consumer. It demonstrates the professionalism of our industry, and again, it underpins our market access. So really, really important. Then in the middle, we've got the LPA ENVD or NVDs. Now, these are the NVDs and the ENVDs are legal documents which communicate the food safety and treatment status of every animal as it moves through the chain. The central component of all of this is a property identification code, or your PIC. PICs are allocated by your state or territory department to identify your property as a livestock producing property. Now, you need to have a PIC to register for both LPA and NLIS, and incorporating that PIC into both of those programs is the only way that traceability and food safety can be managed properly at a national level. So the next one is just about the objectives of the integrity system. Number one is that the LPA and the NLIS are linked through the property identification code system to bring that quality, food safety, animal welfare, and traceability together into one system. The next key objective is that the NVDs or the ENVDs are used to prove that the LPA requirements have been met as the stock moved through the supply chain. Now, having these declarations and additional attachments digitally held with an ENVD mean they stay with the animals on their journey and are not lost, damaged along the way, or become hard to read, as can often be the case with paper forms. Our next key objective is that all LPA accredited producers are supported in running their farm businesses in accordance with the LPA requirements, so that ultimately we get to that last box on the slide, that our Australian red meat is safe to eat, is of high quality, and remains in demand all over the world, which is exactly what we want. So before I move on to Elizabeth, I'm just going to leave you with my top 3 integrity takeaways, because there is a lot to cover in the webinar. So top 3 takeaways. Number 1 is be sure to renew your LPA accreditation when it falls due. You will be notified in advance of this by email, letter, or SMS, so you will be aware when you need to reaccredit. You can use this process as an opportunity to make sure you're clear on what the LPA requirements are. This includes things like having your biosecurity plan ready and all your records up to date. Soon you'll be able to access a personalised recommendations report after finalising your accreditation, but Elizabeth will take you through a little bit more about that later. Number 2, by keeping your accreditation up to date means you also have easy access to the NVD or the free eNVD system. Now, the eNVD system has undergone a number of improvements over the last year, and it's now more accessible to different types of users. So we're really encouraging everyone to give it a go. It is possible to SMS or email submitted consignments to your transporter or other receivers if they do not use the eNVD. It's always important to remember that your NVDs or your eNVDs are completely filled in and are accurate. Now, lastly, my last top 3 integrity takeaway is big one to remember is you need to use sheep devices for sheep and goat devices for goats. It's very important that we get that right, that you choose your species-specific tags or devices in the correct way. It's also important that any transfers are completed on the NLIS. It's up to the receiver to do it, but we always encourage everyone to check to make sure that the receiver did actually complete that transfer on the NLIS system. So that's it from me. I will now pass you over to Elizabeth, who's going to take you through the LPA in a little bit more detail. So over to you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Cherie, and hi everyone. So Cherie mentioned, I'm going to talk you through just LPA key points in terms of what you need to do to meet the program requirements, a little bit about the program changes first, and also around the NLIS requirements as a livestock producer. So LPA is your on-farm assurance program that covers off on your food safety requirements, animal welfare and biosecurity, and it's the vehicle by which you get your NVDs and access to those in order to move your livestock. So the value of LPA is really important. It helps us secure our access to our global markets and has helped create our $74.5 billion industry that we have at the moment. So it's really important to giving our assurance to our customers, whether that's domestic ones in the retail shops or overseas partners that take our meat, and making sure we can continue to expand those accesses and improve the value of our industry. So food safety, welfare, biosecurity, and underpinning and helping that traceability is really important. And more focus is coming in on the assurance that LPA can provide for that. So LPA is really important to do that. And in order to keep moving the program forward, we've done some improvements to it. So starting on the 1st of September, we'll have a new set of program rules, and those rules allow us to improve the program and how it operates and actually make it more robust and a bit easier for producers and do more for you as well. So we've got some key changes there up on the slide. So we've got a self-assessment tool going into the accreditation process to streamline and improve that process. We've got the ability to add in voluntary modules as well. Our first one being the harvested rangeland goat module, which is alignment with the eID rollout as well for sheep and goats. We can use the ENVD to make additional declarations as well through these new program changes, and also look to start recognising other industry programs that exist that do audits and compliance work as well, and recognising and sharing those audit outcomes to reduce the duplication in the compliance space for producers as well. We've also done a bit of tidying up to make sure it's really clear about the processes around audits and complaints and coming into the program and all of the requirements around the administration side. So very new and improved, and definitely something exciting for me who's involved in it day to day. Now, in terms of the new self-assessment tool, there's nothing you need to do for it. It's just part of the accreditation and renewal process. So next time you log in to do reaccreditation, which could be next month or it could be in 3 years' time, you'll basically be presented with the self-assessment. So what it does, it's replacing the multiple choice quiz that's currently in there, and it's aiming to improve the experience, improve awareness, identify any areas where you might need a bit of help, and give you that guidance and a personalised recommendations report at the end, so that you have the access to the resources, the information that you need to make those changes in line with the program. The LPA learning modules remain available for you as well, so you can keep doing that learning as well on demand. So we're definitely there to try and make it a nicer experience as well, so a bit simpler to move through the screens, for a nicer user experience for producers doing that accreditation process. Another key change with the program is the introduction of a voluntary module. So this is an optional module that producers who capture harvested rangeland goats can choose to seek accreditation in. So this is coming into line with the sheep and goat mandate for eID moving forward from the 1st of January. So this enables the continuation of harvested rangeland goats that meet that definition on screen there to be moved without an eID being applied, either to one registered goat depot or direct to processing from the point of capture. And registered goat depots would also need to be approved in this module as well. So this is important to enable the traceability and approval of that tag-free movement for harvested rangeland goats. So it's a new concept, and definitely one we've been working hard with the goat industry and with the state governments on to make sure we get it right. Part of it is also that there's a new NVD becoming available for producers that opt into this module and get approved to participate. So the harvested rangeland goat NVD will be available shortly and will be used for moving harvested rangeland goats only. That means there'll also be a change to the goat NVD, the red one at the moment that's in the books. So we're removing the tag-free questions out of that one and making sure that that one's only applicable to goats with NLIS tags. So if you do harvest rangeland goats, you'll need to have LPA accreditation for goats, and then you need to apply for the accreditation in the harvested rangeland goat module through your LPA account. What happens then is the state government that you're in, so WA, would then receive that application and review it and make sure that they approve of that movement happening with you, tag free. Once they approve your application, that then pushes it back to you, where you'll need to make payment for accreditation in that module, and then you're able to buy the Harvester Rangeland Goat NVDs or access the eID system to create those declarations. So that's the process that's in place. It requires state government approval to continue as the permitting system to move them without an eID, and we'll have that more information available about this module in September for implementation from October. So now moving on to the general requirements around the LPA program. So LPA on farm consists of 7 different modules. These are the mandatory requirements that cover off your food safety, your livestock transactions or your NVDs and NLIS requirements, and also your biosecurity and animal welfare. So I'm just going to run you through the 7 different areas and just the key tips around what you need to do to make sure you're meeting those requirements. So the first one is in relation to food safety, and it's all around your property risks and minimising contamination risks. So the key thing to remember is you need to do a property risk assessment for contamination risks on your property, be it physical, chemical or otherwise, and reduce exposure to your livestock to minimise the risk of contamination when they turn into meat at the other end of the supply chain. The other requirement around food safety is the animal treatments that you may administer to your animals. So making sure you're keeping lots of accurate records around those treatments, and that you're adhering to the withholding periods or the export slaughter intervals, or you're communicating them on the NVDs if those animals are still in those periods as well. Really important for food safety and making sure we don't have chemical residues in the meat at that processing point. The other requirement around chemical residue management is what you're feeding livestock. So we say stock foods and also chemical use on your pastures. So making sure again that you're applying chemicals in accordance with the labels, keeping really good records, and managing your grazing rotations so you're aware of withhold periods. And if you are buying in feed as well, making sure you're getting commodity vendor declarations or information about the chemical or food safety status of that feed before you're feeding it to your livestock as well. Again, all about minimising that risk of contamination once those animals are turned into meat, so we don't get sick as humans as we go to eat them. The other requirement around food safety, and it crosses over into animal welfare as well, is your fit to load requirements or preparing livestock for dispatch. So this is all around making sure your yards, equipment, facilities, trucks are all in good condition and not going to cause contamination to the livestock. Also that their animals are fit for the intended journey. And then you've got records of your transporter details and those outgoing NVDs as well for your records. Moving on to biosecurity. So the key thing here is having a documented biosecurity plan for your property or properties if you have multiple, and making sure you're implementing that biosecurity plan to minimise the risk of diseases and weeds and things that you don't want getting established on your property. That might be introducing livestock, quarantining, fencing, keeping records of who's coming and going, signage and monitoring livestock. So really important you have a documented plan in place as the key requirement for meeting biosecurity under animal welfare, under LPA. And for animal welfare in LPA, we have the reference to the animal welfare standards and guidelines. So the requirements around this is having a copy of those standards, doing your LPA training module on those standards, and training your staff who perform animal husbandry procedures in accordance with those standards as well, to make sure that everyone knows what they should be doing. So it's very high level requirements around welfare, but really important ones as well to make sure our animals are being reared correctly. And last but not least, we're talking about number 5 within the LPA standards, which is all around livestock transactions and movements. So this has to do with your NVD requirements and your NLIS requirements. So I like to divide it into 2 different sections to match up with what we do in relation to these. So if we're talking about stock moving onto your property or incoming livestock, the requirements is getting copies of those national vendor declarations from the person who you're receiving them from, so you're aware of all the potential risk factors or the information on those NVDs in relation to those animals, and keeping copies of them on hand. If you're using the eNVD system, they'll actually be in your eNVD system ready for you as well, so they're already stored there for you. The other thing to remember with incoming livestock is that if you're buying from another producer in particular, you'll need to do the transfer of those livestock onto your property within 2 days of their arrival. That's your responsibility as the receiver of the livestock. So you'll need to make sure that happens. If you're buying from a sale yard, they'll do that transfer for you. But if you're buying directly from a producer or through Auctions Plus or something like that, you need to make sure that transfer is completed. And George will run you through how to do that shortly. When you're dispatching livestock, on the other side of this requirement, making sure you're completing your NVDs correctly in full, you're answering all the questions, you're signing it. It's really important that those documents are accurate and correct. Keeping copies of those outgoing ones as well, also equally important. And the other thing there is around identifying your livestock or making sure they're identified with an NLIS device before they move off your property. So they're the key requirements around NVDs and NLIS in relation to this requirement. That's just a summary of sort of what I just said. So making sure you're updating that NLIS database within 2 days of stock arriving onto your property, or if someone's doing it on your behalf, making sure that it has been completed correctly is also equally important. Also, if you're dispatching livestock, making sure you're completing that NVD for all of those movements, because it is a movement record required under legislation as well. And just some reminders, because it's always important. We have the NVD system, which is electronically available as well. So we have the website and we also have the mobile app that works offline. It stores all your eNVDs in one location, so they're always accessible to you. It makes things a bit easier and it streamlines completing multiple forms at once. So if you're completing an MSA declaration or an animal health declaration, it kind of streamlines answering all those questions for you. It's also in the hands of the person who needs it as soon as you hit submit. And you can also manage multiple properties and create consignments if you've got multiple PICs in your system. So eNVD, we say it's faster and easier, noting that some people prefer paper, and that's also acceptable at this point in time as well. But tips for using paper: make sure you can read the writing, that you've answered all the questions, you haven't answered questions twice, you've signed it, and making sure that if you do make changes to that, that you're initialing that on the paper version as well. So they're the tips and tricks around NVDs, and we do have loads of resources. And if you're interested in learning more about eNVD or want some help, you can always get in contact with us or search for our website help resources as well. And not to think that we don't have resources about LPA in general, but we do. We have loads of resources about how to meet all of the LPA requirements that I just talked about in more detail. We also have a free record keeping book that you can download online, or you can buy a copy of it through your LPA account as well if you would like a printed book sent out to you. But that's enough about LPA for the minute. So we can talk now about NLIS and the requirements around animal identification and traceability. So NLIS consists of 3 different elements, or 3 core elements, that work together to give us traceability of our livestock, which is really critical in case of an emergency animal disease outbreak. So we have the PICs, which Cherie talked about, is the property code you get from your government when you register as a property that has livestock. Then we have the NLIS tags, which are moving to electronic for sheep and goats, well, we already have them for cattle. And then we also have recording the movements in the NLIS database as well. So those 3 things work all together to give us the traceability that we need. So tips around your livestock devices. NLIS, we approve those devices. So we approve them, we trial them, we test them, we make sure that they're fit for purpose before they are approved for use. They need to be fitted to your animals before they move off your PIC. In WA, I believe it's within 6 months of their birth as well. that the eID needs to remain with the animal for its lifetime. But if you do lose a device or it falls out or if it stops working, you need to make that replacement. So if the animal's on its pick where it was born, you can replace it with another breeder tag, which is a white tag for cattle or a yellow or a year of birth color for sheep and goats. If the animal's not been born on that property, you need to put in a post-breeder tag, which is orange for cattle or pink for sheep and goats. So depending on where the animal has come from, that's the type of tagging system you need to use. So it's so important to make sure you keep on hand a bunch of post-breeder tags if you routinely introduce livestock, so you've got some on hand in case you need to use them as well. In terms of some tips for sheep and goat eID, because it is coming into place very, very soon, making sure that you're ordering the right tags when you're placing orders for eIDs is really important for sheep and goats. So the tags that are approved, that the physical plastic part in terms of the tag design is the same for sheep and goats, but they're actually coded specifically for the species that you order. So if you order sheep tags, they'll get uploaded to the database and added to your pick as sheep tags. So when you apply them to sheep, that's how we know that it's a sheep tag moving through the supply chain. You can tell which is a sheep tag and which is a goat tag by the codes that's printed on the outside of the tag. We call this the visual number. So for sheep, you'll either have an S or a T that's printed in that highlighted section there on the tag there, which indicates that it's a sheep tag. And then if it's a goat tag, it'll have K or L, and that just explains that it's a goat tag. So if you do have both sheep and goats, that's a way to tell visually which are which. They should come in bags as well that say they're goat tags or sheep tags. So just be really conscious of that if you do. Are you placing orders for tags, or you've got both sheep and goat devices on your property, because you have both types. Up on screen, we also have examples of the currently approved electronic devices for sheep and goats. So there's a few different types. We've got a lot of wraparound tags where the pin actually contains the transponder or it's embedded into like the loop part. We also have some a dual pin tag as well that has 2 anchor points, or we've got a similar button tag as well, similar to the cattle button. It's a bit lighter and smaller than that tag. And for goats, we also have a leg band as well. If you've got earless goats, that's an option as an alternative as well. So applying the right tag with the right applicator is really important to get the best retention. Following the instructions and making sure the placement is correct as per the instructions is also equally important to get good retention. So if you're not sure about the applicator or the pin looks a bit wonky, make sure that you're really checking those instructions to make sure you're getting the best retention. And if the tags are falling out or you've got issues, make sure you're talking to the supplier. Let ISC know. We can also follow up to make sure that you're getting the best results. And obviously, if you're having retention issues, you could try a different tag as well. So the wraparounds don't work for your fencing or your vegetation. You could try a button tag, for example. So give a few a go if you're having issues as well. And last but not least, we'll just touch on recording movements in the database. I did touch on this a little bit with LPA, but you can create an NLIS account for free. And you can't break the system, and it's the more familiar you get with it, the easier it feels. It can be overwhelming at first because it's a new system, but you can't break it. Have a play with it, hit some buttons, see what happens. George is going to run you through what I mean. But just as a reminder, the responsible person for completing transfers in the database is the person receiving the livestock. So if you're a producer and you're buying from another producer, it's your responsibility as a receiving producer to do that transfer. If you're buying through a sale yard, they'll do the transfer for you, but you still can log on and check. Feedlots as well, you're sending to a feedlot, the feedlot will do that movement onto their feedlot, and processors as well will do that processing movement or kill or fuel pick. Selling platforms, so Auctions Plus or Gumtree or Facebook, they don't do those transfers, so that's on the person who's buying those livestock as well. If you are using an agent or a third party or someone else is helping you, always ask for an upload ID and check that in the database as well to make sure that that transfer has been done correctly as well. And last but not least, the last thing is around linking the NVD in that transfer record as well, which links together the NVD and the NLIS transfer. So we've got that backup for traceability. So all really important points. But that's NLIS movement recording and the end of my presentation. So I'm going to hand over to George, who's going to run you through some demonstrations on actually how to use the database and some key features. So George, over to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hello, everybody. My name's George. I've been around for 25 years on NLIS. So when it first started back in 1999, I've seen a lot of changes going through the system. So hopefully I can show you what currently is available. I know Elizabeth mentioned we are upgrading the system, so it's going to be bigger, better, and faster. So we'll go through a few things today. Firstly, how to log in, pretty basic, but we've added a new feature to log in. So we're going to log in via My MLA. So we click on this button here, which means you need to set up a My MLA account. I won't show you how to set up a My MLA account, but all you need is an email address and you create your own password. So create a My MLA account, and the advantage of doing that is you can link all your other accounts together. So just an email address, password when you first sign up. Click on login, and then you can link all your accounts that MLA have a control over. And here are some of them here. So LPA, NLIS, which we'll go through today, MSA, genetics, ENVD, and my feedback. Today we'll go into NLIS only. So we click on continue to NLIS. And this page also has a few dashboards and a few things of interest for you. We're going to go into NLIS today, continue to NLIS. I've got two accounts linked to my account. So some of you may be agents, some of you may have a producer account and other accounts, third-party account, or maybe two producer accounts. You might have two properties, which you can link them together, by the way. But if you have separate accounts, you can put them all through here, or just the one account, you click on the login. So I'm going to log into my producer account. I'm going to log in, and it's brought me straight into my producer account, which is what most of you will have. Now, up the top here, there's a help button. We click on that help button, help tools. And here's a list of all the tech tips available for cattle. If you change that to sheep individual, these are all the tech tips for the sheep account. So they're just links, you click on them and it opens up. Some of these are old. We're going to update several of them. Others we're just going to wait until we use the new system. Click on home again. What I'm going to do is going to hide this header. There's a button over here. Just gives us more real estate, easier to observe and look at. And today we're going to go through sheep. So I want to work with sheep individual. Now, if you don't have that because you created your account years ago for cattle only, under this list, I want to, right up the top is the account management, and you want to change your livestock type. So change my types of livestock. Let go. And now I can, if I didn't have these, I could add that on or remove it. So leave them all ticked. We continue. And now I've got all these different species. So the sheep, mob, and individual aren't different species, but they're different ways to manage the system. So sheep individual is the main focus. So eID for sheep, and that's where we're going to go. One of the questions that came in, a pre-registration question came in, was how do you set an animal to dead? So they find an animal that's died on farm. So that's the first thing I'll show you. So I go, I want to, and here's the list of all the things you can do on the system. Now it's broken up into 3 sections. Up here is the account management, changing your email address or adding species like I just showed you. So the beauty about editing your account details is having your email up to date. So we can inform you about webinars like this. And if an animal is moved on or off your property, we notify you in some circumstances. So it's good to keep your details up to date. Then there's notifying the database of. Sometimes that's called the doing part. So you're actually making a change to data. You're changing, and by change, I mean you're moving animals on or off your property, or what I'm going to show you now, setting an animal to deceased. And then the third section is running reports. So that's the doing, and that's the viewing with the V. That's the viewing part, and that's the doing part. Today we'll go through notify the database of device status. We'll also have a died on property. So we select this one, click go. We're going to type in the details on screen. And you simply enter the tag number in here. And I've just copied one. This is my test data. So there's the tag number. I've got 2 properties linked to this account. So click on this one, QBZZ, and we found this animal dead yesterday. You continue. It's asking to confirm you're about to record the following livestock died on the property. You go send. And that's it. So the job's done. There's an upload ID, which is your receipt number. Elizabeth mentioned that earlier. So you have a receipt number to say, this is when I did this particular function. That is, I set that one animal to deceased. Now you can, if you've got a scanner, you can scan as many tags that on the animals that have died. If there's only 1 or 2, you can handwrite them. Now we're going to see the outcome of this. So that's the upload ID or receipt number. If we click on view my transaction history, and I'll show you this again when I do the transfer, but click on view my transaction history. Continue. This is what we've done today. This is showing me all the things I've done in my account today. Most of you, there only be 1 or 2 things. So this one I just did. There's the time, 9:36 here in Sydney. And it's got complete, which means it's gone through successfully. No problem with that file, no problem with that action that I've done, which is to kill off an animal. So we go home again. Now we're going to get another list of tags. We're going to use these tags. So you can copy. I'm just simply doing a Control C, which is a copy those tag numbers. Move on to the next part of the session, which is you want to transfer livestock that are moved onto your property. And it's this really long one here, sheep, goat, SA camelids. SA camelids are South American camelids, which is your alpacas and llamas. So they're all put in the same transfer or transaction. And remembering, once again, Elizabeth said it's your responsibility when you're receiving animals. You know, those on-farm auctions don't do it. Auctions Plus and Marketplace and eBay and all those places, they don't do the transfer. So again, we're going to do it on screen. How would you like to record the movement? We're going to type details on screen. Here's a list of tags. Now you notice there's, and Elizabeth did show you this as well, there's the ones with letters and numbers, and there's just pure numbers. The pure numbers are the microchip or the chip number inside the tag. These ones, the QBZZ, that's the number printed on the outside of the tag. You can use either one. You don't use both for the same e-tag, you only use one. I'm just putting them both here so you can see what they look like. What pick are you moving them to? Again, I've got 2 properties linked to this account. I'm moving them to my second property. I'm moving these animals between my 2 properties. So this is going to my QD, ZZ 3333, coming off this property. So I've got both properties. Again, it's my responsibility to do it, whether I own both, but as the receiver, I need to do this. I think the last thing that was mentioned was entering in a NVD serial number, so I'll enter one in. They moved today. Now there's 10 tag numbers, but there's 15 head. And the reason is you only have to identify electronically sheep born after the 1 January. So you have it, and if you do this afterwards, so if you do this on the 10th of January and you're buying in animals, or maybe 10th of July next year, you're buying animals in, some have an electronic tag and some don't because they were born different years. You put the head count there. And that's the difference. So this is incorporating 2 transactions in one. It's actually given us a mob-based movement of 15 head. Have moved from this QD ZZ3333 to QB ZZ2222. Now 15 head, but these are the 10 individual tag numbers. Again, we can continue, and it's going to give us that same confirmation as it always does. This is what you're about to do. So there's a list of tags from property to property, and I hit send. Again, give me confirmation. This time it's giving me 3 numbers, a little bit confusing. This is the original upload, so I just did on screen, and it's broken up into 2 separate files. This is the 10 individual tag numbers, and this is the mob of 15. When I said number of head moved 15. We'll click on the same thing, view my transaction history. What we did today, and we've got the full, that's the first one I showed you, 779, that's the 2 in 1. Then we've got the individual ones and the mob-based. As you see, manual mob-based movement. And this is the manual P2P, the individual tag numbers. It's got an error. So we click on the error. It's a link. And it tells us these tags are already on the property, so we can't move them. So they're already here. You can't move them here twice. So we put errors in so you can see what they look like. We'll close that screen. Part of the LPA audit, they may ask you for upload IDs, give you confirmation of have you done. At an LPA audit, they'll say you haven't done this transfer, complete the transfer and provide us with the upload ID. So you make sure you provide them with the relevant upload ID. In this case here, it's this individual one. Well, they may say recall the whole 15, then you give them this one. So keep a record of the upload IDs. Give them all 3, it's not going to hurt. So upload the whole file and put it in the tags and the number of head. And it's as simple as that. Click on back home. Now we'll run some reports. We'll just run a basic report. Again, if you're asked to verify you bought animals onto your farm, show me that you've done the transfer, you can give them the upload ID, but if someone's done on your behalf and you can't get the upload ID, you can just run a report that says, view devices on my property. There you go. And you're going to see what's moved onto this property. So livestock transferred onto PIC. Then we'll look at what's moved on this property, QD ZZ3333. They're the tags we uploaded just now. So in that there was more than 5, but remembering the others errored out. So there's the upload we did, confirming that's what I just did today. That was the NBD serial number we used, and there's the tags. You can take this date back. So looking at what's happened, say on the 1st of July, 32 head. Sometimes these reports are run instantly, like they are now. This is the live system. Sometimes they run within milliseconds. Sometimes they can take 2 or 3 seconds, or sometimes every 20, 30 seconds, depending on other activity going on at the same time. Elizabeth mentioned, you can't break the system, so have a play and use a short date range first, and then go further and further and further. All these fields are sortable, so you want to look at animals that you bought only in a specific date. You can sort by movement date. So click on the yellow box up here, the yellow heading, movement date. and it's sorted. Click it again and it's sorted in highest to lowest this time. Notice up here says there's 32, showing 1 of 20 only. There you go, all, and there's the whole list. So easy to sort, and you can change the species. You'll see all these species. Okay, now there's 118. There was 32 a second ago. This is now getting this cattle. You click on all. Now it gives cattle and sheep. So it's all sorted in. You sort by date, and you can actually export this data. Export any fields. If you only want the electronic number, you can. So click export. You just want the electronic number because you want to put it into your software system, or you want to visually read the tag, or both. You hit submit and you can save that on your own hard drive, put it into software if you want. So that's about it for me. As I said, you can run these reports, and Elizabeth mentioned a few times, run these reports. They're pretty easy to run. You won't break the system. If you go back a long time, it may take a lot longer to run the report. So it's gone 118 to 297. So that's a 1 year's worth of data. 2 years worth of data, as you see, comes up very quickly, but sometimes it is slow. I was doing a demonstration last week and it took about a minute to come up, just depending on the traffic at the time. So when you buy animals, if you buy animals from a sale yard, it's their responsibility, but check anyway. It always helps to check. And that's it for me.
Thank you, George, for that wonderful demonstration. It's always so good to see you just step through it all. I think hopefully everyone on the call has found that of use. Don't forget, this will be coming out as a video, so you can go back through the steps that George just took you through in your own time, and also check the resources, and our help details will be all available for you as well in that post-webinar pack, as well at the end of this slide. So now I will hand over to Michael Britton from the West Australian Department, who's going to take you through some specific information around implementation in WA for sheep and goat eID. So I'd just like to welcome Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherie, and thank you to ISC for helping to set up this evening's webinar, and also to all the people online who have taken the time out of their evening to learn about eID. If we just go straight into the why traceability issue, look, there's a number of reasons. I don't know how many reasons people have heard, but there's a number of reasons why we're moving to eID. The mob-based movement of mobs of sheep and goats is fairly traceable. There have been some audits that have netted 96% traceability rates, but right down to 50% in some pockets as well. So we really are moving to eID to have a rapid response to disease outbreak, foot and mouth disease, all sorts of incidents where we can find out where individual sheep have been, who they've mixed with along the way, and where they're at the moment. So that last dot point there that says insurance principle is really the key reason, is one of many, but is the key reason why we're moving to eID. For example, there was an outbreak of foot and mouth disease in Brazil in 2005. Much of the country's producers had to slaughter stock. Many parts of Brazil were shut down, and they only came out of full lockdown 2 months ago. So that's from an outbreak that happened some 17, 18 years ago. So insurance is really important, that we can get the information about where sheep have been, who they've mixed with, and where they are now as quickly as possible. Moving on to the implementation dates for Western Australia. The implementation dates we've broken into two activities: tagging, which mostly relates to producers, and scanning, which, yes, does also relate to some producers who receive stock, but is more the downstream operators, your feedlots, your abattoirs, sale yards, export depots, so forth. So if you're a producer and you're looking at tagging and you're wondering what the dates are, from any sheep or goats born from 1 January 2025 onward require an eID. You can't put a visual tag in their ear for the purpose of movement and traceability. You may still want to use visuals for on-farm management, on-site management, but anything born from that 1 Jan date needs an eID. Regarding any stock that you've got on property now, that's born before the 1 January date, they can move with a visual tag or an eID tag right up until the 30th of June 2026. So the 1st of July is the date where anything that moves off your property, regardless of when it was born, needs an eID. Around scanning, so in order to get the system up and running and to sort out transitional issues that we may encounter, sale yards and abattoirs will start scanning anything that has a tag in it from the 1st of July 2025. Normal processing of visual tags will take place. It'll be a dual process that happening at those facilities. But from the 1st of July 2026, anything that leaves a property has to have an eID in it, and regardless of where it's going, where it lands, it has to be scanned. So they're really the important dates that you need to know about. If you've got sheep on farm right now that are just mowing the lawn and they're never going to go anywhere and they've got a visual tag in their ear at the moment, you don't need to put an eID in their ear. You only need to put an eID in their ear if they're heading off somewhere. So the government support, the government has provided about $25.6 million towards a support package for industry. There's a thing called TIP payments, which I'll speak about shortly. There's been a grants program that I'll also speak about shortly. We have the biosecurity and agricultural management movement of stock regulations that manage the movement of stock and mandate the use of eID tags. So there's a bit of regulatory, it's not really reform, but rearrangements that are going on at the moment to allow for eIDs to be mandated in WA. We're doing a ton of communications and engagement work. That's why we're here this evening. We're out at lots of shows. We're sending out emails to lots of pics and letters, and also that also funds a small eID team to oversee the administration of the program. Moving on, the Tag Incentive Scheme, if you're not aware of it, is a scheme that was developed to help bridge the gap between the cost of a visual tag and an eID device. So it's worth 75 cents and it should be automatically deducted from the cost of an eID when you go online or into a retailer and buy an eID. And the rationale behind the 75 cents is it kind of represents half the difference between the cost of a visual tag, maybe 30-40 cents maximum, and an eID tag, which might cost $1.50, $1.60, maybe as high as $1.70. So we're hoping that the cost differential is lessened. Make sure that when you do go online or go to your local retailer and buy a bunch of tags, that you do make sure that you've got your 75-cent rebate on each of those eID devices at the point of purchase. At the moment, the scheme is for current year of birth tags, so that's black, and we hope to have an announcement out to you in the next month or so around what the tag scheme will look like in 2025, maybe 26, maybe 27, and we're just crunching some numbers now just to look at how wide and broad that could be. So the tags, the eID tags have had a good take up to date. This is just a graph of the last 2 and a bit years of eID tags sold per month. And just for those of you who are interested, we're just about to reach the 4 millionth eID sold in Western Australia. So there's a really good take up there. And on the following slide, we'll see that it's not just 1 or 10 or 50 large picks that are gobbling up all the eIDs. It's actually a number of smaller picks, of broader picks of different properties that are investing in eID technology already. In the next slide, we will see there's been an infrastructure grant scheme which has been specifically aimed at downstream operators. So again, your processors, export depots, sale yards, feedlots, in order to help them purchase essential eID equipment. So obviously, if you've got a sale yard and it's got 7 on-ramps, you're going to need 7 dual panels and all sorts of things attached to that, so that the eID's movement in the sheep or goat's ear is seamless. It's all recorded, it all gets uploaded nice and seamlessly. So we had a round 1 grant cohort through which we received about 25 applications for the larger downstream operators, and a round 2, which was a public cohort, which was for smaller seasonal operators like seasonal sale yards that might do a couple of sales a year, but also community resource centres and grower group alliances. So all up, we funded about 91 different organisations to have good eID infrastructure. And the reason for funding some of those public groups like grower group alliances and CRCs was so that producers can go into your local CRC and either borrow or hire a wand for a weekend if you don't have access to a wand, or you don't want to spend $1,500 on a wand. So our final slide is basically a few of the lessons that we've learned along the way. Your sheep and goats on your property, when you go and buy your eIDs for them, as George was saying, you don't have to then go and scan them once they arrive at your property. They are all automatically assigned to your pick. Producers largely do not have to go out and buy the $1,500 or the $2,000 wand, unless you're bringing stock onto your property. But even if you are bringing stock onto your property, again, as George said, sale yards can arrange that, and you could make sure that they do. You can also get livestock agents to do that, or you can go down to your local CRC or your grower group alliance and ask to borrow their wand. So our advice is you don't need to rush out and buy the latest wand, because there should be other solutions available to you. Again, this is a little bit repetitious, but sheep and goats get eID scanned at the point of arrival or by arrangement through a sale yard or an agent. They don't get scanned off your property. They don't get scanned onto the truck. They get scanned when they arrive. And yeah, everyone operates differently. So lots of processes operate in different ways and have different loading ramps and off ramps and lairages and all sorts of things. So the grants program that we've run hasn't been one size fits all. And what we've learned along the way is there will be some transitional issues. We're well aware that there will be issues. People might have issues learning about the NLIS database. They might have issues discovering that you need a certain type of applicator for a certain type of tag that needs to go in a sheep's ear. And just to bear with us, the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development, we're not going to be out there from the 1st of January with a big stick threatening everyone with compliance action. We will be taking a collaborative approach and a light touch approach to make sure that everyone gets on board. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. There has been a question just come through in the Q&A. Are there subsidies or grants for eID scanners?
Yes, there were, and they actually closed in May, but they were for so they weren't producer grants; they were downstream operator grants.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for clarifying that one. It was great to have you join us tonight, Michael. Thank you so much for taking the time to take everyone through the WA specific details, because there's so much to cover and a lot to take in. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. I know it's a big effort in your evening to come and talk about sheep and goat eID and integrity systems, but we really appreciate your attention. There is a survey in the Q&A that we'd love it if you could fill in, because we love getting your feedback so we know what we can do better next time. We really appreciate your attendance and hope you got something out of it. Thank you to Michael and all the panelists, George, Elizabeth, Callum in the background tonight, and our team for bringing this together. Thank you all and have a great night.